Hello, dear friends. Welcome back to Healthy Aging Bites, your trusted space for honest, science-backed, and practical health advice made specifically for older adults. I'm Dr. Michael Whitmore, a physician with over 30 years of experience in geriatric medicine. And if there's one thing I've learned in these decades of caring for older adults, it's this: the smallest habits often make the biggest difference in your health. Today, I'm going to talk to you about something that may seem simple or ordinary even, but I promise you, it's anything but. Let me begin with a story. A patient, a potato, and a problem no one saw coming. Not long ago, a patient of mine, let's call him Mr. Anderson, walked into my clinic complaining of stomach cramps, fatigue, and what he thought was just a bad meal. He was 74, retired, independent, and proud of his self-sufficient lifestyle. He cooked most of his meals, ate vegetables, and even kept a food diary. We ran tests, no infection, no stomach virus, but his potassium levels were off. His gut bacteria showed signs of imbalance. Something wasn't right. So I asked him a question I ask every senior who comes to me with digestive issues. Can you walk me through what you ate this past week? How did you store your food? And that's when the red flag popped up. He had roasted potatoes, his favorite, but they had been sitting in his fridge for nearly 2 weeks before cooking. Now, most people wouldn't think twice about that. Potatoes in the fridge? Sounds normal, right? But here's the thing, it's not. The danger in your refrigerator, and you may not even know it. Each year, over 48 million Americans get sick from foodborne illnesses. That's 1 in 6 people. And more than 3,000 people die from those illnesses annually. What's often left out of that conversation is this: a significant portion of those hospitalizations and deaths happen to people over 60 years old. Why? Because as we age, our immune systems naturally weaken. The gut barrier becomes more vulnerable. Our response to bacterial infections slows down. That means a slice of moldy bread or improperly stored leftovers might not just upset your stomach, it could land you in the ER. And the worst part? These threats often start in the very place we trust the most, the refrigerator. Safe food for seniors isn't just about what you eat, but where you keep it. As a physician, I've often heard this from my older patients. I eat healthy, doctor. I buy fruits and vegetables. I cook at home. I even avoid junk food. And they're absolutely right. But here's the secret few people talk about. Even the healthiest foods can become harmful if stored the wrong way, especially for seniors. When we talk about senior-safe nutrition, we don't just mean low-sodium or high-fiber diets. We mean foods that maintain their nutrient value, don't spoil easily, don't grow bacteria or mold in subtle ways, and most importantly, don't become toxic when stored improperly. The surprising truth: 9 foods you shouldn't keep in the fridge. This might sound surprising, even controversial to some. After all, we were raised to believe that the fridge is the safest place for most things. But the truth is, some foods are not meant to be chilled. In fact, refrigerating them could cause nutrient loss, flavor changes, toxin formation, and even bacterial overgrowth without visible signs. And many of these foods are staples in American kitchens: potatoes, bread, onions, tomatoes, even olive oil. But first, a small request. Before we dive into this important list, I want to kindly ask, if this topic speaks to you, or if you're learning something new already, please take a second to like this video, subscribe to Healthy Aging Bites, and maybe even share it with a fellow senior or caregiver. Every click helps us grow this community and keep bringing you science-based health tips for your age, your lifestyle, and your needs. What you'll learn next. Over the next several minutes, we'll go through 9 everyday foods that many people refrigerate out of habit but shouldn't, especially if you're over 60. Some of the explanations may surprise you. Some might make you rethink how you organize your kitchen. And one item at the very end? It's something almost every senior uses, and yet, when stored the wrong way, it may contribute to inflammation, joint pain, or digestive issues. So stay with me. What you learn today could protect your health even save your life. Now, let's begin with the first food on our list. Potatoes, but not for the reason you think. Chapter 1. Potatoes, the hidden hazard in your fridge. As a physician, I've always believed that health isn't just about the pills we take or the exercises we do. It's also deeply tied to how we live each day, especially what we eat and how we prepare it. And sometimes, even the most innocent of foods can carry unexpected danger. Take the humble potato, for example. You've probably eaten thousands in your lifetime: baked, mashed, roasted, fried. Comforting, filling, cheap, a true American staple. But if you're like most people, there's one thing you might be doing without realizing the risk: storing raw potatoes in the refrigerator. Let's talk about why this is a problem. A quiet one, but potentially a dangerous one, especially for older adults. The science. What happens inside a cold potato? At room temperature, the starches in potatoes are relatively stable. But when stored at cold temperatures, specifically below 45 degrees Fahrenheit, the starch begins to convert rapidly into sugar. Now, that might not sound alarming at first. After all, who doesn't like a slightly sweet potato? But here's the catch. When those sugar-rich potatoes are later roasted, baked, or fried, particularly above 250 degrees Fahrenheit, they undergo a chemical reaction called the Maillard reaction. This reaction, while responsible for the beautiful browning on crispy fries or roasted spuds, also triggers the formation of a compound called acrylamide. Acrylamide has been classified by the National Toxicology Program as a potential human carcinogen. It's been shown in animal studies to increase the risk of cancer, especially when consumed in high amounts over time. And here's the troubling part. This reaction is more intense when the potato has been refrigerated beforehand. A real case. It was just a baked potato. I once treated a lovely woman in her late 60s, let's call her Mary. She lived alone, was fiercely independent, and had always taken pride in her cooking. She ate home-cooked meals daily, mostly vegetables, some fish, and her absolute favorite oven-baked potatoes with olive oil and herbs. She started noticing something odd after a few months: increasing stomach sensitivity, occasional nausea, and a strange metallic aftertaste in her mouth, especially after meals with potatoes. We ruled out infections, food allergies, and acid reflux. But during one of our visits, I casually asked, "Do you ever refrigerate your potatoes before cooking them?" "Oh, always," she laughed. "I buy them in bulk and store them in the crisper drawer. I thought it made them last longer." Unfortunately, it also made them more harmful. Once we changed her storage habits, keeping potatoes in a cool, dry pantry instead of the fridge, her symptoms slowly faded. Why this matters more for seniors? You might ask, but if this affects everyone, why does it matter more when you're over 60? Here's why. As we age, our bodies become less efficient at detoxifying harmful compounds. The liver works harder, the kidneys slow down, the intestinal lining becomes more sensitive. That means even small amounts of toxins like acrylamide accumulate faster and have more pronounced effects in older adults than in younger, more resilient bodies. In other words, the very potato you've loved for decades may not love you back anymore, at least not when stored the wrong way. So, how should you store potatoes? Let's keep this simple. Here's what you need to know. Do store potatoes in a dark, dry, and cool place, ideally between 50-60 degrees Fahrenheit. A pantry, cupboard, or basement corner works well. Keep them in a paper bag, mesh sack, or open basket, not in a plastic bag, which traps moisture and speeds spoilage. Don't store potatoes in the refrigerator. Even if you think you'll cook them soon, it's not worth the risk. Never store potatoes near onions, which can cause both to spoil faster due to ethylene gas release. If you've already refrigerated them by mistake, it's best to discard or use them only in non-high heat cooking, such as steaming or boiling, though even then, their texture may suffer. A note on texture and taste. Besides the chemical concerns, cold-stored potatoes often turn grainy, mushy, and darkened. This isn't just unappetizing, it's a sign that oxidation and nutrient loss have begun. So, if you've ever noticed your roasted potatoes tasting oddly sweet, or your mashed potatoes looking gray and feeling off, chances are your fridge is the culprit. A personal reflection. When I was younger in my medical career, I didn't think much about these things. I was taught to focus on disease, on diagnosis, on prescriptions. But over the years, I've come to realize that true health lies in prevention, and prevention starts with understanding the little choices we make in our kitchens every day. Food is medicine, but only if we treat it like one. Key takeaways for seniors. Never refrigerate raw potatoes. Keep them in a cool, dry, dark place. Watch out for texture changes, odd sweetness, or discoloration. Be mindful of how storage affects cooking safety. Remember, what's good for the pantry isn't always good for the fridge. In the next chapter, we'll look at something most people place in the fridge without a second thought. A food you probably have in your kitchen right now, soft, comforting, and seemingly harmless. But when stored wrong, it can become a silent health hazard. Up next, bread, when cold storage becomes a crumbly, moldy mistake. Chapter 2. Bread, when cold storage becomes a crumbly, moldy mistake. Bread has always been more than just food. It's a symbol of warmth, a breakfast staple, a humble companion to soups, salads, and sandwiches. And for many of my patients, especially those living alone in retirement, bread represents comfort, simplicity, familiarity. But as comforting as it may be, there's something many seniors don't realize. Refrigerating bread may be making it spoil faster and become a hidden risk to your health. I just wanted it to last longer. That's what my patient Barbara told me. She was 76, lived in a small apartment in Florida, and often shopped for groceries just once a month. To keep things from going stale, she'd put most of her bread in the fridge, thinking, of course, that the cold would help it last. But over time, she noticed something strange. Her sandwiches became tough and dry. Her toast wasn't toasting, it was crumbling. And once, she bit into a slice and realized too late that it had grown a thin layer of mold. "It didn't even look moldy at first, doctor," she told me, "but the taste it was awful. I felt sick for hours." This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a classic case of a well-meaning habit with unintended consequences. The science. Why bread hates the cold. You'd think cold would preserve bread. After all, it works for milk, cheese, and meat. But bread is different. Its structure is built on starches, and starch behaves very differently when exposed to cold temperatures. When bread is refrigerated, the starch molecules in the crumb, the soft inner part, begin to recrystallize. This process, known as retrogradation, causes the bread to become dry, crumbly, and stale faster than it would at room temperature. Here's the irony. Putting bread in the fridge actually shortens its shelf life. And while you may not always see the changes immediately, you'll certainly taste them. Mold, the invisible invader. The second issue is more serious mold. Bread, especially when stored in the fridge and then brought back to room temperature, experiences condensation. That moisture creates a perfect breeding ground for mold spores, particularly in older bread or bread stored in plastic bags. Now, here's what many people don't know. Not all mold is harmless. Some molds produce mycotoxins, toxic compounds that can affect liver function, kidney health, and immune response. For someone over 60, especially those with chronic conditions like diabetes, Colorado PD, or compromised immunity, this is not a minor concern. Even if you cut off the moldy part, the roots may have already spread deep into the loaf beyond what the eye can see. Barbara's wake-up call. Barbara, my patient, was lucky. Her symptoms passed within 24 hours. But for many, the effects of mold exposure may go unnoticed for days or weeks, manifesting as fatigue, low-grade nausea, or digestive upset. And sadly, because these symptoms are vague, they're often dismissed as just aging. But they don't have to be. Cold versus frozen. A big difference. Now, I'm not saying you should throw away extra bread. Quite the opposite. If you want your bread to last longer than a few days, the freezer is your friend. Freezing bread stops staling by halting molecular movement, prevents mold growth, preserves flavor and texture far better than the fridge. The trick is to slice the loaf before freezing, then defrost individual slices as needed either in a toaster or at room temperature for 20-30 minutes. This method works beautifully for everything from whole wheat to sourdough to gluten-free. How to store bread the right way. Here's what I recommend to all my senior patients. Keep fresh bread at room temperature in a bread box, cloth bag, or paper bag, not plastic, for up to 3-4 days. Freeze any portion you won't eat within that time. Don't store bread in the refrigerator. It doesn't preserve, it degrades. Never eat bread that smells sour, has visible mold, or feels unusually moist. And if you notice any food sensitivities like bloating or headaches after eating older bread, stop and check for early signs of spoilage, even if there's no visible mold. Special note: seniors with compromised immunity. If you're living with cancer, autoimmune conditions, diabetes, or are taking immunosuppressants, then you're especially vulnerable to foodborne mold and fungal toxins. In these cases, bread hygiene becomes even more essential. I always tell my patients, when in doubt, throw it out. No loaf is worth a health setback. Why this matters more than you think. Bread seems so simple, so familiar. But sometimes, it's the everyday things, the ones we handle without thinking, that need the most attention. As we age, we must become smarter eaters, not just healthier ones. The fridge isn't always your friend. And bread, when mistreated, can go from being a source of comfort to a silent threat. Key takeaways: never store bread in the refrigerator. Use the freezer for long-term storage. Keep fresh bread in a dry, ventilated space at room temperature. Watch for signs of mold, even invisible ones. When in doubt, toss it out. In our next chapter, we'll uncover another kitchen staple that's probably sitting in your fridge right now, releasing odors, spoiling silently, and potentially compromising your immune system. Up next, onions. How this pungent favorite can turn your fridge into a germ magnet. Chapter 3. Onions. How this pungent favorite can turn your fridge into a germ magnet. Onions are the quiet heroes of the kitchen. They start almost every soup, stew, or stir-fry. They add flavor, depth, and aroma to nearly every home-cooked meal. And they're often one of the first things we toss into the shopping cart because they last, right? Well, yes and no. You see, onions can last a long time, but only when stored properly. And sadly, for many older adults, the fridge seems like the safest place for them. I keep my onions in the fridge, doctor. Doesn't everyone? That's what Margaret, a patient of mine in her early 80s, said with a smile during one of our regular check-ins. She had recently developed a persistent cough, a strange, bitter taste in her mouth, and a sensitive stomach. Nothing alarming, but enough to make her uncomfortable, enough to affect her daily life. When we looked into her diet and environment, one strange detail came up. My butter's been tasting funny lately, so has my yogurt. Almost like onions? That was the clue I needed. The cold truth about onions in the fridge. While refrigeration is ideal for many foods, onions are not one of them. Here's why. Moisture matters. Whole onions have a papery outer layer that protects them from moisture, but when stored in a cold, humid environment like the fridge, they begin to absorb moisture quickly. This leads to softening, premature spoilage, mold growth around the root ends, odor transfer. Onions release volatile sulfur compounds. In a closed refrigerator, those compounds don't just stay with the onions, they seep into nearby foods. Ever had your strawberries or butter taste oddly savory? Now you know why. Accelerated breakdown. The cold causes onions to break down their natural enzymes. This alters the flavor, making them bitter and speeds up decay. What started as a crisp, flavorful bulb becomes mushy and discolored within days. A hidden risk: bacterial growth on cut onions. Let's go one step deeper. Cut onions, especially those wrapped loosely or in containers with trapped moisture, can become breeding grounds for bacteria. There's a long-standing myth that onions absorb toxins from the air. While that isn't scientifically accurate, there is truth in the concern about bacterial overgrowth, especially when stored without airtight sealing, left in the fridge for more than 2 days, exposed to condensation, or poorly cleaned surfaces. This is especially concerning for seniors with weakened immunity, gut imbalances, or sensitivities to sulfur-based compounds. Margaret's story: a refrigerator wake-up call. After a quick kitchen audit, yes, I sometimes do virtual pantry tours with my patients, we discovered a half-used onion wrapped in foil, stored next to her cottage cheese, a net bag of yellow onions kept in the crisper drawer with leafy greens, and multiple jars of peanut butter, pickles, even jam, that all had a faint onion scent. No wonder her butter tasted off. Once Margaret moved her onions to a dry, dark pantry shelf and stopped storing cut onions more than 24 hours, her symptoms gradually disappeared. "I thought the fridge was helping me," she said, "but it was messing up everything around it." Why seniors are more affected? For older adults, smell and taste are already in decline. As we age, our sensitivity to subtle food spoilage drops. That means we might eat foods that are already mildly spoiled, miss signs of cross-contamination, be more vulnerable to sulfur-based digestive irritation. That's why keeping the fridge odor-free, moisture-controlled, and properly organized becomes more than just a matter of cleanliness, it's a matter of health. The right way to store onions. Here's my professional advice. Whole onions, store them in a cool, dry, well-ventilated place. A pantry or kitchen drawer works great. Keep them in mesh bags or paper sacks, never plastic. Cut onions. If you must refrigerate, do so in an airtight glass container and use within 1-2 days. Keep onions separate from potatoes and leafy vegetables. These items release gases that accelerate spoilage in one another. Don't store onions in the fridge. Drawer, it's too humid and air restrictive. Never wrap onions in foil or leave them uncovered. Moisture and lack of airflow encourage bacterial growth. Common misconceptions. I thought cold air slows down spoilage. It can, but not when the food in question thrives in dryness and airflow, like onions. Can't I just cut off the soft part? If one layer is spoiled, the inner part may already be compromised. For seniors, any signs of softness, dampness, or strange odor equals discarded. Key takeaways. Never store whole onions in the fridge. Keep cut onions refrigerated only in airtight containers for short periods. Watch for off flavors in nearby fridge items. They might be absorbing onion fumes. Maintain a clean, ventilated storage area for pantry staples. Don't mix onions with high moisture produce like lettuce or herbs. A final word. As a doctor, I've seen too many seemingly minor kitchen habits lead to real health consequences. And in the case of onions, it's not just about keeping them crisp, it's about keeping your entire fridge safe. Sometimes, the most flavorful ingredient in your recipe can be the most disruptive in your refrigerator. In our next chapter, we'll take on another misunderstood kitchen staple. A beautiful, vibrant fruit that so many people think they're protecting by putting it in the fridge. Up next, tomatoes. Why cold kills their flavor and steals their nutrients. Chapter 4. Tomatoes. Why cold kills their flavor and steals their nutrients. Tomatoes are one of nature's most generous gifts. Bright, juicy, rich in flavor and color, they're a staple in everything from pasta sauces to salads, from soups to sandwiches. For many older adults, they are also a key source of vitamin C, lycopene, and that comforting burst of freshness in a home-cooked meal. But here's the hard truth. When you put tomatoes in the fridge, you're not preserving them, you're punishing them. And the damage is more than just taste. It's a quiet, consistent loss of nutrition, something seniors can't afford to lose. My tomatoes never taste like they used to. That's what Harold, a retired teacher in his 70s, shared with me during a checkup. I've been eating tomatoes for as long as I can remember. Grew them myself once. But lately something's off. They taste watery, mushy, like they're tired. I asked him a simple question. Where do you store them? In the fridge, of course, he said. Doesn't everyone? That was the moment we needed to talk. The science. What cold does to tomatoes. Tomatoes are tropical fruits. That's right, fruits, not vegetable sand. They evolved to thrive in warm climates. When placed in environments below 50°F, a few key things happen. Ripening stops prematurely. Tomatoes develop their flavor after harvest. When they're chilled too early, the ripening enzymes responsible for their signature tang and sweetness are deactivated. Result: watery, flavorless fruit. Texture becomes mealy. The cell walls inside tomatoes begin to break down in cold temperatures, creating that dreaded mushy, rubbery texture. Nutrient loss. Tomatoes are rich in vitamin C, but studies show that vitamin C breaks down more rapidly in cold storage, especially once the tomato is cut or bruised. Seniors need vitamin C not just for immune support, but also for skin repair, iron absorption, and antioxidant defense. Harold's tomatoes reborn. After that conversation, Harold made a simple change. He began keeping his tomatoes on the counterstem side down, away from sunlight, and only placed very overripe ones in the fridge for short-term storage. Within weeks, he noticed a difference. They taste like they used to, he said. They actually have flavor again. Sometimes, it really is that simple. Why this matters more for seniors? There are 3 reasons why cold-damaged tomatoes are more problematic for older adults. Taste loss can lead to appetite loss. As we age, our sense of taste naturally diminishes. If your food tastes bland or lifeless, you're less likely to eat enough, especially if you live alone or cook for yourself. Nutrient intake becomes more critical. Tomatoes provide lycopene, a compound shown to support prostate health, eye health, and cardiovascular function. Cold storage reduces lycopene availability over time. Digestive sensitivity increases. Chilled, underripened tomatoes can cause acid imbalance or discomfort in some older adults with GERD or sensitive stomachs. How to store tomatoes the right way. Here's how I teach my patients to handle tomatoes safely and deliciously. Store whole, uncut tomatoes at room temperature, ideally 65–75°F. Place them stem side down on a flat surface to reduce air exposure to the fruit. Keep them out of direct sunlight, which can overheat and dry them. If they are overripe and soft, refrigerate only for 1–2 days, then use them quickly. Never store cut tomatoes uncovered in the fridge. Always seal them tightly to reduce moisture loss and contamination. Don't stack tomatoes. Piling them causes bruising, which accelerates spoilage. Bonus tip: cook before they go bad. Got tomatoes that are soft, wrinkled, or too ripe? Turn them into sauce, soup, or roasted tomatoes instead of tossing them. Lycopene becomes more bioavailable when tomatoes are cooked with a bit of fat, like olive oil. A roasted tomato with garlic and basil isn't just delicious, it's medicine on a plate. The real takeaway: the fridge isn't always the solution. We've grown up believing cold means safe. But when it comes to tomatoes, cold means compromised. And for seniors, where every meal counts, where every nutrient supports immunity, memory, bones, and energy, these little mistakes add up. You don't have to stop eating tomatoes. You just have to let them breathe. Key takeaways: store whole tomatoes at room temperature. Use the fridge only for very ripe or cut tomatoes, and use them fast. Stem side down is better for storage. Avoid direct sunlight and moisture. Eat them fresher. Cook them into heart-healthy sauces. In our next chapter, we turn to a tiny yet mighty food that's earned the title of a superfood: garlic. But storing it in the fridge could turn this immune-boosting hero into a hidden health hazard. Up next, garlic. When cold storage dulls its power and invites dangerous bacteria. Chapter 5: Garlic, When cold storage dulls its power and invites dangerous bacteria. For centuries, garlic has been treasured not just as food, but as medicine. From the temples of ancient Egypt to modern hospitals, garlic has been hailed for its ability to boost immunity, reduce inflammation, lower blood pressure, and even fight off infections. And in the kitchens of older Americans, garlic remains a beloved staple, adding depth to soups, sauces, roasts, and stir-fries. But here's the catch. Store garlic the wrong way, and its healing power begins to vanish. Worse, sight could become hazardous. I thought it was just a smell thing. I remember my patient, Evelina, retired nurse, still sharp and sprightly at 78. She had always believed in natural remedies, kept a tidy spice drawer, and swore by garlic tea every time she felt a cold coming on. But she came in one day with persistent nausea, lightheadedness, and stomach cramping. Her vitals were mostly stable. Her labs were a little off, but nothing dramatic. Still, something wasn't right. I made a batch of garlic oil last week and used it in my pasta. After that, it all started. That sentence raised a red flag. Garlic oil, stored in the fridge for over a week. The science. What cold does to garlic. Whole garlic is a naturally long-lasting food. When stored in a cool, dry, ventilated space, it can last for several months. But when garlic is exposed to cold and moisture, particularly in the fridge, things begin to change chemically and biologically. Sprouting and breakdown. Refrigeration causes garlic to sprout prematurely. You'll notice green shoots popping up in the cloves. These sprouts are bitter and signal a loss of nutritional quality, especially of allicin, garlic's key health compound. Allicin degradation. Allicin is formed when garlic is chopped or crushed. It's the very substance responsible for garlic's antibacterial, antiviral, antioxidant properties. But cold, humid conditions deactivate this process. The result? Your garlic may taste the same, but its healing benefits are diminished. Botulism risk. Here's the most dangerous part. When chopped or minced, garlic is stored in oil without acid and kept cold. It creates anaerobic, oxygen-free conditions. That's the perfect environment for Clostridium botulinum, the bacteria that causes botulism, a rare but deadly illness that can lead to paralysis or death if not caught early. Evelyn's garlic oil. A near miss. Evelyn had made homemade garlic oil, something she had done for years, but this time, she'd stored it in a reused jar in her fridge, with no vinegar or lemon juice added. After just a few days, the bacteria had begun to grow. She didn't know it. She didn't see it. She couldn't smell it. But her body sensed it and warned her. Fortunately, she sought help early. We caught the symptoms before they progressed, but her experience was a powerful reminder. Even natural foods can turn dangerous when stored without care. Why this matters for seniors. As a geriatrician, I often tell my patients, garlic is only as good as how you store it. Why? Because older adults may have weaker immune responses, making them slower to detect and respond to bacterial exposure. Allicin is a natural support for cardiovascular and immune health, both of which decline with age. Losing that benefit through poor storage is a missed opportunity for health. Seniors who live alone may use garlic more slowly, increasing the risk of it spoiling quietly in the fridge or oil. How to store garlic the right way. For whole bulbs, keep garlic in a dry, dark, well-ventilated space like a hanging basket or mesh bag. Use within 3-5 weeks, depending on climate. Don't refrigerate whole garlic bulbs. Moisture encourages sprouting and mold. For chopped or minced garlic, use immediately after chopping for maximum allicin effect. If storing, place in an airtight container and keep refrigerated no more than 24 hours. Preferably, mix with vinegar or lemon juice to lower pH and inhibit bacterial growth. Never store raw garlic in oil without acid and longer than 2 days, even in the fridge. Assume garlic oil is safe because it looks fine. Store-bought alternatives. If you love the convenience of pre-chopped garlic, choose jarred garlic in vinegar from reputable brands. Look for expiration dates and refrigeration instructions. Avoid garlic stored in oil unless it's clearly acidified and commercially stabilized. When in doubt, go fresh, crush, chop, and use. It's not only safer, it's more powerful. The bigger picture. Garlic is a symbol of strength in cultures all over the world. But like anything strong, it must be handled with wisdom. For older adults, small kitchen habits like storing garlic the wrong way can have big consequences. Not immediately, not obviously, but over time. Preserve your garlic's power, and in doing so, you preserve your own. Key takeaways. Never refrigerate whole garlic bulbs. Store in a dry, breathable space. Use chopped garlic quickly. Refrigerate briefly and only in acid. Avoid homemade garlic oil unless properly acidified. Choose freshness for full allicin benefits. In our next chapter, we'll explore a surprising item on this list of bold beverage and beloved morning ritual that many older adults enjoy daily, but store the wrong way. Up next, coffee. How the fridge ruins its aroma, antioxidants, and your morning ritual. Chapter 6. Coffee. How the fridge ruins its aroma, antioxidants, and your morning ritual. For millions of Americans, the day doesn't truly begin until that first cup of coffee touches their lips. The smell, the warmth, the comfort. For many older adults, coffee is a cherished ritual, a reason to get out of bed, a quiet moment of peace before the day begins. And as a physician who's worked with seniors for over 3 decades, I've seen how much that ritual matters. But here's the truth most people don't realize. Storing your coffee in the fridge may be silently robbing it of everything you love about it and everything that makes it good for your health. It doesn't taste the same anymore. That's what Mr. Thomas told me during one of our regular appointments. He's 81, a retired accountant, and he's brewed his own coffee every morning since the 1970s. But lately, he said something felt off. Same beans, same grinder, same machine, but it tastes flat, bitter, almost like leftovers. I asked the usual questions. Same water? Yes. Same roast? Yes. Then I asked, where do you keep your coffee beans? In the fridge, he said. Always have. Isn't that what keeps them fresh? It's a common belief. But unfortunately, it's also dead wrong. The science. Why coffee and refrigeration don't mix. Coffee is hygroscopic, meaning it absorbs moisture and odors from its environment. In a cold, humid fridge, every time the door opens and closes, moisture condenses on the surface of the beans or grounds. That leads to loss of aromatics. The essential oils that give coffee its complex flavor and aroma begin to evaporate or degrade with exposure to moisture. Result: a brew that smells like cardboard or tastes bitter even when it's freshly made. Flavor contamination. Coffee soaks up nearby odors like a sponge. If your fridge has onions, leftovers, cheese, your coffee beans start to smell like your fridge. Mr. Thomas swore one morning his coffee tasted like garlic pasta. Stale beans. Cold temperatures cause condensation, especially when the container isn't airtight. This leads to clumping, faster oxidation, and staling, even if the beans are only a few days old. Antioxidant degradation. Coffee is a rich source of chlorogenic acids antioxidants that support heart health, brain function, and blood sugar regulation. These compounds degrade faster in damp, cold environments, meaning your coffee loses its potential health benefits. Mr. Thomas's coffee reborn. After we spoke, Mr. Thomas moved his coffee from the fridge to a sealed, opaque container in a dark kitchen cabinet. Within a week, he called to say, "Doc, it's like the flavor came back. It actually smells like coffee again." A small shift, a big difference. Why this matters more for seniors. You might think, it's just coffee, who cares? But here's why it matters, especially in later life. Rituals anchor routine. For many older adults, the act of making coffee is more than a beverage, it's a ritual. It sets the rhythm of the day. When that ritual becomes unpleasant, bitter, or unsatisfying, it can subtly erode joy. Loss of antioxidants equals lost protection. Seniors benefit greatly from coffee's chlorogenic acids. These help reduce inflammation, support cognitive health, improve vascular elasticity. If cold storage removes these benefits, you're drinking flavorless liquid with diminished health value. Taste sensitivity declines with age. Older adults may not detect flavor subtleties, but they do notice when something tastes wrong. A flat or bitter brew can decrease appetite and increase frustration, especially when it's part of a long-held routine. How to store coffee properly. Whether you drink 1 cup or 3, here's what I recommend. Whole beans last longer. Buy whole beans and grind them in small batches. This preserves flavor and antioxidants. Use airtight, opaque containers. Store coffee in a sealed jar or tinot in the bag it came in. Keep it away from heat, moisture, and direct sunlight. Choose a cool, dark cabinet. Your pantry, a closed drawer, or a shelf away from the stove is perfect. Don't refrigerate or freeze daily use coffee. Freezing is okay only for long-term storage, over a month, and only if done in small, vacuum-sealed portions. Avoid plastic containers that trap moisture or transfer odors. Bonus tip: mind your brew. The best coffee for seniors isn't just about how you store it, it's how you brew it too. Use filtered water. Brew at 195, 205 degree Fahrenheit for optimal extraction. Avoid burning the coffee by leaving it on a hot plate too long. If using pre-ground coffee, buy small portions and use within 1-2 weeks. Coffee should be a pleasure, not a disappointment. Final thoughts. Don't let the fridge ruin your joy. As a doctor, I talk about heart health and blood pressure every day. But I also talk about joy because mental wellness is just as important. And for many of my older patients, coffee is a little moment of joy they look forward to. So, let's not let refrigeration ruin that. Protect your beans. Protect the ritual. Protect the benefits. Key takeaways. Never store coffee in the refrigerator. Keep it in airtight, opaque containers. Store in a cool, dry cupboard away from heat and odors. Avoid moisture at all costs. Remember, your morning cup deserves better. In our next chapter, we're moving from beverages to something sweet, sticky, and ancient-thony. But storing it in the fridge could turn this natural wonder into a grainy, sour mistake. Up next, honey. Why cold crystallizes nature's perfect food and invites spoilage. Chapter 7. Honey. Why cold crystallizes nature's perfect food and invites spoilage. There are few foods on earth as pure, precious, and enduring as honey. Ancient jars of honey have been found in Egyptian tombs, still perfectly edible thousands of years later. It's a natural sweetener, a healing remedy, a soothing agent, and a staple in many senior households for tea, baking, or managing sore throats. But while honey is strong enough to survive centuries in a clay pot, it can be ruined in just a few days inside your refrigerator. That's right, the fridge can destroy everything that makes honey magical. Why did my honey turn hard? That's what Alice, a 72-year-old widow and one of my longtime patients, asked me during a routine visit. She loved starting her day with a warm cup of chamomile tea and a spoonful of honey, something her late husband used to prepare for her every morning. It brought her comfort. But recently, her honey had turned thick, gritty, and hard as a rock. It was nearly impossible to scoop. She thought it had gone bad. I keep it in the fridge so it won't spoil, she explained. That's the safest place, right? A kind thought, but not the right one. The science: honey is self-preserving until you chill it. Honey is one of the few foods that doesn't spoil under normal room temperature conditions. Its secret lies in 3 natural defenses. Low water content. Honey is naturally hygroscopic, meaning it doesn't have enough water to support microbial growth. High acidity, pH. The pH of honey is typically between 3.4 and 6.1, making it inhospitable to most bacteria and fungi. Hydrogen peroxide production. Yes, Honey contains natural enzymes that produce small amounts of hydrogen peroxide, which fights bacteria. But when honey is stored in the fridge, especially below 50 Fahrenheit, these natural mechanisms start to break down. The problem with refrigeration. Here's what happens when honey is chilled. Crystallization. Cold causes the sugars in honey, especially glucosido, separate and form crystals. This turns smooth honey into a grainy, solidified substance that's hard to scoop or spread. Moisture introduction. Each time you open and close the jar in a cold environment, condensation may form inside the lid. That trapped moisture can, over time, dilute the honey, and if enough water is introduced, it may ferment. Fermentation risk. Fermentation makes honey smell sour, taste off, and in some cases, bubble or foam. While not usually dangerous, fermented honey is unpleasant and no longer medicinal. Enzyme breakdown. Cold temperatures can inhibit the activity of glucose oxidase, the enzyme responsible for honey's antibacterial effect. So, instead of preserving honey, the fridge degrades it nutritionally, texturally, and functionally. Alice's honey. Restored. I told Alice to move her honey to the pantry, away from heat and light, and wait a few days. Sure enough, the honey slowly softened again. Not completely, but enough to spoon easily and dissolve in tea. She smiled and said, "It's like I got my mornings back." Why this matters for seniors. You might think a hardened jar of honey is just a minor inconvenience. But for many older adults, honey isn't just about sweetness, it's about health and comfort. Soothing agent. Honey soothes sore throats, suppresses nighttime coughs, and helps with seasonal allergy common in older age. Wound care and skin health. Medical-grade honey is used in wound dressings for ulcers and burns. Even regular honey can be used at home for minor skin issues. Digestive support. In small doses, honey supports gut flora and relieves occasional constipation without the harsh effects of laxatives. Mental wellness. That warm honeyed tea? It's a ritual of care, often shared with memories, comfort, and a sense of calm. Disrupting that ritual with a jar of unspreadable honey matters more than it seems. How to store honey the right way. If you want to keep honey pure, smooth, and medicinal, store at room temperature, ideally between 64–75 Fahrenheit. Keep it in a tightly sealed glass or food-safe plastic jar. Place it in a dark cabinet or pantry, away from direct sunlight and heat, like the stove. Don't refrigerate. Don't store with a wet spoon. Always use a dry utensil to avoid introducing moisture. If your honey crystallizes naturally over time, which it will, don't worry, it's not spoiled. You can warm the jar gently in a bowl of warm water, not boiling, to return it to liquid. Avoid microwaving. This can degrade enzymes and antioxidants. A final reflection. In my years of caring for older adults, I've learned this. Sometimes the smallest objects in the home, the honey jar, the tea mug, the quiet morning ritual, carry the deepest emotional weight. Preserve those rituals, protect the simplicity, and never underestimate the healing power of something as humble as honey. Key takeaways. Store honey at room temperature. Keep it dry, sealed, and out of the sun. Don't refrigerate it. Causes crystallization and loss of quality. If crystallized, gently warm, not microwave. Trust that honey, like you, is built to endure. Just treat it right. In our next chapter, we'll explore one of the most popular fruits in the world, easy to eat, rich in potassium, and beloved by older adults everywhere. But in the fridge, it turns dark, mushy, and loses the very nutrients that make it special. Up next, bananas. Why cold stops the ripening and strips away brain. Healthy antioxidants. Chapter 8. Bananas. Why cold stops the ripening and strips away brain. Healthy antioxidants. For many older adults, bananas are more than just a fruit. They're soft, easy to chew, naturally sweet, and packed with potassium, an essential mineral that helps regulate blood pressure, support nerve function, and prevent muscle cramps. They're often one of the first things we recommend to seniors, who need gentle fiber, quick energy, or digestive support. But I have to share something important with you, something that surprises almost everyone I tell. Putting bananas in the refrigerator can ruin their nutrition, damage their texture, and rob your brain of critical antioxidants. Yes, really. Let me explain why. My bananas turned black overnight. Walter, 69, came to see me after a mild stroke. He was recovering while walking daily, watching his diet, and rebuilding his strength. During one visit, I reviewed his food journal and saw bananas listed nearly every morning. "That's great," I said. "How do you store them?" "In the fridge," he replied proudly. "That way they last longer." But then he added something else. "They turn black too quickly now, and sometimes they taste off almost like metal." I knew right away what had happened. The science. Bananas are tropical and the fridge is too cold. Bananas are native to tropical climates, and they don't like the cold. When exposed to temperatures below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, bananas undergo chilling injury, which affects them in multiple ways. Ripening stops prematurely. Bananas continue to ripen after being picked thanks to enzymes and natural ethylene gas. Cold temperatures shut down these enzymes, freezing the fruit's development mid-process. Skin turns black or gray. You may notice that bananas go from yellow to dull brown or even black overnight in the fridge. This isn't mold, it's oxidation and cell wall breakdown triggered by cold shock. Texture changes inside. The inside becomes mushy in patches, or oddly firm in others. The once smooth banana turns unpredictable in bite and taste. Flavor degrades. Refrigerated bananas often develop a metallic or bland flavor, especially if stored cold before fully ripening. What you lose: brain, healthy antioxidants. Bananas are rich in dopamine and catechins, natural antioxidants that reduce oxidative stress in the brain, support memory and attention, protect aging brain cells from inflammation. These compounds are most potent in fully ripened bananas stored at room temperature. Refrigerating bananas before they're ripe prevents these antioxidants from forming properly. And even if ripened first, cold exposure can destabilize their structure, reducing their potency. For older adults, especially those concerned about cognitive health, Alzheimer's prevention, or maintaining sharpness, this is not a small issue. Walter's turnaround. I asked Walter to change two simple things. Let his bananas ripen fully at room temperature. Only refrigerate peeled, overripe bananas he planned to freeze for smoothies. Within weeks, he reported something unexpected. I didn't just enjoy them more, I felt more energized in the morning. No more chalky taste either. Sometimes, when the body absorbs food properly, you feel the difference almost immediately. Mold risk, a hidden problem. Another danger with refrigerating bananas is moisture buildup around the stem, especially in plastic produce bags. This creates a damp, enclosed environment ideal for mold growth. And since the mold often develops inside the stem area, it can be hard to detect. You may cut into what seems like a fine banana, only to find soft, discolored mush within. For seniors with weakened immunity, this can lead to digestive upset, inflammation, low-grade food poisoning symptoms. Chapter 8. Bananas. Why cold stops the ripening and strips away brain. Healthy antioxidants. For many older adults, bananas are more than just a fruit. They're soft, easy to chew, naturally sweet, and packed with potassium, an essential mineral that helps regulate blood pressure, support nerve function, and prevent muscle cramps. They're often one of the first things we recommend to seniors who need gentle fiber, quick energy, or digestive support. But I have to share something important with you, something that surprises almost everyone I tell. Putting bananas in the refrigerator can ruin their nutrition, damage their texture, and rob your brain of critical antioxidants. Yes, really. Let me explain why. My bananas turned black overnight. Walter, 69, came to see me after a mild stroke. He was recovering while walking daily, watching his diet, and rebuilding his strength. During one visit, I reviewed his food journal and saw bananas listed nearly every morning. "That's great," I said. "How do you store them?" "In the fridge," he replied proudly. "That way they last longer." But then he added something else. "They turn black too quickly now, and sometimes they taste off almost like metal." I knew right away what had happened. The science. Bananas are tropical and the fridge is too cold. Bananas are native to tropical climates, and they don't like the cold. When exposed to temperatures below 55 degrees Fahrenheit, bananas undergo chilling injury, which affects them in multiple ways. Ripening stops prematurely. Bananas continue to ripen after being picked thanks to enzymes and natural ethylene gas. Cold temperatures shut down these enzymes, freezing the fruit's development mid-process. Skin turns black or gray. You may notice that bananas go from yellow to dull brown or even black overnight in the fridge. This isn't mold, it's oxidation and cell wall breakdown triggered by cold shock. Texture changes inside. The inside becomes mushy in patches, or oddly firm in others. The once smooth banana turns unpredictable in bite and taste. Flavor degrades. Refrigerated bananas often develop a metallic or bland flavor, especially if stored cold before fully ripening. What you lose: brain, healthy antioxidants. Bananas are rich in dopamine and catechins, natural antioxidants that reduce oxidative stress in the brain, support memory and attention, protect aging brain cells from inflammation. These compounds are most potent in fully ripened bananas stored at room temperature. Refrigerating bananas before they're ripe prevents these antioxidants from forming properly. And even if ripened first, cold exposure can destabilize their structure, reducing their potency. For older adults, especially those concerned about cognitive health, Alzheimer's prevention, or maintaining sharpness, this is not a small issue. Walter's turnaround. I asked Walter to change two simple things. Let his bananas ripen fully at room temperature. Only refrigerate peeled, overripe bananas he planned to freeze for smoothies. Within weeks, he reported something unexpected. I didn't just enjoy them more, I felt more energized in the morning. No more chalky taste either. Sometimes, when the body absorbs food properly, you feel the difference almost immediately. Mold risk, a hidden problem. Another danger with refrigerating bananas is moisture buildup around the stem, especially in plastic produce bags. This creates a damp, enclosed environment ideal for mold growth. And since the mold often develops inside the stem area, it can be hard to detect. You may cut into what seems like a fine banana, only to find soft, discolored mush within. For seniors with weakened immunity, this can lead to digestive upset, inflammation, low-grade food poisoning symptoms. Chapter 9. Olive oil. When cold turns a healthy hero into an inflammatory hazard. For decades, olive oil has been praised as one of the world's healthiest foods. It's a foundational ingredient in the Mediterranean diet, recommended by countless cardiologists, nutritionists, and geriatricians like myself. It's rich in monounsaturated fats, vitamin E, and polyphenols, plant compounds that fight inflammation, lower cholesterol, and support cognitive health. For seniors, especially, olive oil can be a powerful ally in reducing joint pain, supporting brain clarity, protecting heart health. But there's something most people don't know. Storing olive oil in the refrigerator may silently undo many of those benefits. Let's take a closer look. It got cloudy. Then I couldn't pour it. Bill, one of my longtime patients, came in one day complaining about stomach upset. He'd been following a heart-healthy diet, cooking all his own meals, and using extra virgin olive oil religiously. But something had changed. His joints ached more. His digestion was off. He felt bloated more often than usual. When we traced his habits, we found a small but important clue. I read somewhere that oils go rancid in the heat, so I keep my olive oil in the fridge. It's always a little cloudy and thick, but I warm it up before using. It seemed logical, but it was slowly backfiring. The science. Why cold storage damages olive oil. Olive oil is sensitive. Unlike more stable fats like lard or butter, Olive oil has delicate chemical bonds that react to changes in light, heat, air oxidation, and yes, cold temperatures. Here's what happens when you store olive oil in the fridge. Solidification. The oil becomes cloudy and thick, sometimes forming waxy clumps. This is harmless on its own, but repeated temperature cycling equals oxidative stress. Every time you take the bottle out of the fridge and let it warm up, then return it to the cold, the oil undergoes temperature shock. These fluctuations break down antioxidant compounds and accelerate oxidation, the very process that turns oil rancid. Free radical formation. Oxidized oil can form free radicals, unstable molecules that contribute to inflammation, cell aging, and tissue damage, especially harmful to joints, gut lining, and blood vessels in seniors. Loss of polyphenols. Polyphenols are olive oil's secret weapon, responsible for its anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective effects. Cold storage destabilizes these compounds, especially when followed by rapid warming. Why this affects seniors more? As we age, our bodies recover more slowly from inflammation, are more vulnerable to oxidative stress, rely more on diet to maintain internal balance. For older adults, using olive oil to manage arthritis, high blood pressure, or memory decline, every drop counts. Storing it the wrong way might not show immediate effects, but over weeks or months, it can blunt the healing properties you rely on. The pouring problem. Many older patients also find solidified olive oil hard to use. It may spill unpredictably when shaken loose. The bottle gets slippery. Measuring becomes imprecise, leading to overuse and excess calories. This matters for those watching their weight or managing diabetes, where even small daily calorie increases can accumulate quickly. Bill's new routine. I recommended Bill discard the oil that had been stored cold. Replace it with a fresh bottle of cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil. Store it properly in a dark glass bottle in a cool cupboard. Avoid heat sources like the stove or window. After a month, his bloating reduced, his joints felt better, and his meals tasted noticeably richer. I thought I was preserving it, he told me, but I was slowly spoiling it. How to store olive oil correctly. To keep your olive oil healthy, fresh, and functional, buy extra virgin olive oil in dark glass bottles or stainless steel containers. Store at room temperature, ideally between 57–70 degrees Fahrenheit. Keep it in a cool, dark cabinet, away from heat or direct sunlight. Use within 6 months of opening, 1 year if unopened and stored properly. Always close the cap tightly after use to reduce air exposure. Never store in the refrigerator unless absolutely necessary for very hot climates. Avoid plastic bottles. Light and air seep in easily. A final reflection. Olive oil has been called liquid gold for a reason. It's not just a cooking oil, it's a medicine, a shield, and a companion in healthy aging. But like all treasures, it must be cared for wisely. For older adults, especially, every decision in the kitchen is a vote for your future. For your joints, for your heart, for your brain. So let your olive oil stay warm. Let it stay whole. And in doing so, let you stay whole too. Key takeaways. Never refrigerate olive oil. Store in dark, airtight containers in a cool cabinet. Avoid repeated cold-warm cycling. This degrades nutrients. Choose extra virgin, cold-pressed varieties for maximum benefits. Use within 6–12 months for full medicinal value. Final thoughts. What we've learned. Over these past 9 chapters, we've explored how something as simple as where we put our food can influence our health, comfort, and quality of life. The refrigerator, while a modern marvel, is not a one-size-fits-all solution. And for seniors, the margin for error is often slimmer. Whether it's a banana, a slice of bread, a spoonful of honey, or a pour of olive oil, your body deserves the best version of these foods. Preserve them properly. Understand their nature, and use them not just to survive but to thrive. Thank you for reading. If you found this series helpful, I invite you to share it with a loved one. Small habits, when changed with care, can lead to big transformations. Healthy aging begins in your kitchen. Let's make every bite and every choice count. Final message. Your health begins in the kitchen. Let's get it right together. Dear friends, we've come a long way together in this video, from humble potatoes to precious olive oil. And along the way, we've uncovered a truth that often gets overlooked. Your refrigerator may be doing more harm than good, especially if you're over 60. You've learned that certain foods like bananas, honey, garlic, bread, and even your morning coffee can lose their nutritional value, become unsafe, or even turn toxic when stored cold. But more importantly, you've learned this. Healthy aging doesn't start with a prescription. It starts with knowledge. It starts at home. It starts in your kitchen. As a doctor who spent over 3 decades caring for older adults, I want you to remember, it's not just about what you eat. It's also about how you store, how you handle, and how you preserve the foods that nourish you. Because your body deserves better. Because you deserve better. Let's make this a conversation. Now I want to hear from you. Have you been refrigerating any of these foods without knowing the risks? Will you reorganize your kitchen after watching this? Do you have tips of your own to share? Please scroll down to the comments and let us know. You never know, your story could help someone else avoid a mistake. If this helped you, don't keep it to yourself. If you found this video helpful, please do 3 simple things right now. Click the like button. It tells us this content matters. Hit the share button. Send it to a friend, a neighbor, or someone you care about. Tap the subscribe button and make sure you turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next video. Here at Healthy Aging Bites, we're building more than just a channel. We're building a community of smart, curious, empowered seniors who want to live better, longer, and stronger. And you're a part of that. Until next time, thank you for watching, thank you for learning, and thank you for caring about your health. Stay safe, stay wise, and as always, stay young at heart. I'm Dr. Michael Whitmore, and this has been Healthy Aging Bites. I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and turn on that bell, because the next episode could be the one that protects your health or even saves your life.